Wow, I am just blown away, man. I see everybody here with such hunger for Jesus, and that's just so amazing. Wow. So yeah, my name is Clay, and uh, and I'm just here to share my story. I'd like to be real with all you guys. Is that okay? All right. So I grew up poor. I grew up poor. I grew up in California. And my parents they were drug dealers. They didn't know any better. My dad was raised in foster care, and my mom was she was turned over for heroin in the eighth grade. So you know what I mean. So with me growing up, I really didn't know Jesus. I didn't know God. There was times when I was mad at God. We were raised on welfare. We always had food. My mom always they always tried to provide. I seen a lot of violence. I seen violence. I seen drugs. There's always a triple beam at the table, which a triple beam is just for measuring drugs. So we always had a lot of traffic coming in and out the house, and it was me, my sister, and my stepdad, and so we seen a lot of violence. We didn't see no God, but yet my parents tried to control me and tell me what to do, but they were still selling drugs to everybody. They were breaking into houses, and me and my sister were allowed to break into houses and give stuff to them, but it was just kind of weird, right? So um, you guys got a dog in the church. That's so cool. What's up, puppy? So I guess my testimony really is so through those things, seeing the violence, seeing the things in school. School was hard because I was a minority, right? I mean, you guys can all relate to being a minority, right? I was the only white guy, so it was like I had to fight all the time, and I didn't know how to fight. I always wanted my mom. I was like, "Hey, mom, teach me how to fight." You know what I mean? So there came a time when there was a kid at school who was picking on me, and then I just punched him in his face. I don't even remember doing it. I just remember he was in my face, and it was like something took my hand, and his face was soft. I was like, wow, you know what I mean? So after that, I really just started fighting all the time. I loved to fight. I got boxing gloves when I was like, I'd say 12 years old, always fighting. So the lifestyle that I grew up into led into more violence, led into school, led into juvenile hall, led into jail. And so by the time I was in the halfway through the fifth grade, we actually lived in one place for a year and a half. So I started developing friends in school, right? So that was super cool. So uh, so then we moved to a place called Muscoy, which was in San Bernardino. My parents decided they were going to get it together. My mom and dad, we went to church, right? So we went to church. I didn't want to go to church. I was like, man, this sucks. I don't want to go. My dad would wake me up, and I'd go to church, and then so through that, I saw these people just like loving on each other. It was just so cool. Pastor Holcomb was his name. My parents got involved. They got cleaned up. It lasted for like a year, but I accepted Jesus Christ into my life, and it changed me. And through that, I knew that there was a God, right? There was a God. So I had an experience. I knew something was different. Someone wasn't telling me, hey, there's a Jesus out there. You got to follow all these rules. But it was something I felt. It was internal. So yeah. So I found Jesus. It was cool. My parents, they started selling drugs again. My mom was cheating on my dad, and a lot of things really was hard because my mom would have me wait at the door while she was doing things for drugs and the fighting and the violence, and it really just made me angry at the world. So by the time I was in school, I didn't even want to go to school. I went to junior high, and they was just all lined up like they was all gangsters. And I thought, man, I'm not going to go. I said, no, I'm not going to school. Forget it. So I started ditching school, getting in my dad's stash and getting his weed because I had connections. I already knew how to live that lifestyle, breaking into cars and just doing all kinds of things that were ungodly. You know what I mean? So I had this bitterness. I had this rage. I had this anger. And so yeah, dude, I was just lost. I was a monster. I was a thief. I was a liar. I was a bully at times. Yeah. So I was doing all the wrong things. Yet I knew who Jesus was. But the reason why I'm really sharing my story here, like I wrote all this down, right? I'm like, Lord, what do I do? What do I say, right? But I'm really trying to paint a picture of not really all the bad things that I've done, because, dude, there was a list, but of how God changed me, right? So when I was going to high school, I was recruiting kids to go steal from malls. Like, so I thought, man, I'll just take it. You know what I mean? Says, I got to look like this. I got to be dirty. I got to be nasty. So we stole things, had all these kids. And then through my parents selling drugs, I met a lady named Brenda, and she took me around the United States stealing exotic reptiles. So I thought, so here I am stealing all this stuff, stealing from the mall. And one day my dad comes into the room. He's like, dude, like, I'm like, man, I'm just getting blessed. And he's just like, he just shook his, he knew something was wrong. But everything that I stolen, it was just empty. It was empty, right? Because I tried to take it, right? It was just this emptiness. So, yeah, I said that he was a physical therapist. That's where I was getting all this stuff from, right? So through deliverance and through rejection and through all these things, you start to develop a personality. Even though when you find Jesus, you still have all this stuff. You got this stuff you need to get rid of. Not being wanted as a kid, developed with rejection, and developed all these problems in my personality, in which I was really trying to figure out. But I really needed someone to step up and be a leader and be like, hey, bro, like, let's get your house cleaned. You know what I mean? So through that, I had some kids, still doing the same thing, going and getting a job. I got married. I would fight. I would lose my job. I'd get another job. I would fight. People would disrespect me. And then through the rage and the open doors, I was just continually inviting all these demons in. So when I went to a building, anywhere I went, even with my wife, if someone looked at me wrong, like I would just look at them until they looked away, and they didn't. I was fighting them. And now that I'm completely free, I was all messed up. I was causing all those problems. Like I didn't even know, right? So I was still selling drugs. I was still moving drugs. I was still moving pounds of weed. I can get it. I had the connections. When I married into the Hells Angels, and then we was all doing drugs. My mom was doing drugs. My dad was doing drugs. Her parents were doing drugs. And then I got recruited into being a skinhead, which the only reason I really did it, because I was already doing things that were bad, is because this guy went to go collect money on a guy who wouldn't pay me. He just showed up dressed like that, and the dude gave him the money, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what I'll be. It's easier. I don't got to go beating people up for money. So then I became a skinhead, right? So I don't know. I would say part of my testimony was hard, because joining a racist organization had brought so much shame and guilt and condemnation on me that it was just terrible. Wherever I went, now I go to like an all-black church, right? And they're just loving on me, man, just showing me so much love. So anyways, through the drugs, I tried to go to church, lead my family to church, but I ended up losing my family. I lost my 2 kids and my wife to drugs. And I got kicked out. I lost everything. I lost my cars. And I remember sitting in my car watching my wife, like, and my grandpa, they were all chilling together, and I didn't understand, but I wasn't being a leader. I wasn't leading my family. So even through deliverance, it gave me eyes to see that instead of it saying, hey, it was all their fault, it was my fault, because I wasn't being the leader I needed to be, right? So I had to live in my car, and that really sucked. But hey, I learned how to survive. I showered at 24 Hour Fitness. I worked with the Mexicans. They bumped my car in the morning. I did construction, and so through that part of my life I would say was my rock bottom, right? That was my rock bottom. So anyways, through the fighting and all the things that I was still doing, it came to a point where I broke my hand. I stayed with my mom. My mom let me back in because they thought I was going to kill everybody. I was pretty crazy. So I broke my hand the night before. I got in a fight, and I had to take the city bus. I haven't taken the city bus in years, you know what I mean? So I'm on the city bus, and then that was my rock bottom. So that was my rock bottom. I said, Lord, I'm sorry for all the things that I did. I'm broken. I need somebody that you would send into my life and help me be strong. So so I prayed that prayer. I was crying my eyes out, and so the Lord answered me immediately. So I'll go to the welfare office with a broken hand to get, I don't know if it's called DHS out here, but California is called welfare. You know what I mean? So as I'm sitting on the bus, I cried out to the Lord, and I felt the presence of the Lord, and I said, Lord, I'm done. I'm willing to lay it all down. I'm willing to give it all up. And when I prayed that prayer, I go to the welfare office, and that's when I'm sitting there, and I see a beautiful girl come walking in the welfare office. And then so me being the way I was, like I'm like, I still look at everybody like, man, I can still fight with one hand. You know what I mean? And I see this girl standing over there, and I'm just like, dang, man, she looks so good. And I'm like, why am I saying that, dude? This is like the welfare office. You can't be acting that way. You know what I mean? So anyway, so I followed her out, and I got her phone number. I was like, hey, can I have your phone number? And I got a hug from her. And she tells me, she's like, you don't want my phone number because I got 4 kids. And I was just like, hey, I love kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so we exchanged phone numbers, you know what I mean? So her name is Evelyn Vanbuskirk. So you guys see what I'm saying here? Like, when we hit a place of like rock bottom, when we tell God that we're done, like Lord, I'm done, right? When we get to that place, that's when God moves. And that's when he moved, right? So I met this girl who had 4 kids, whose dad wanted nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with them, right? So anyways, I get with her, and I ask her, I said, hey, if I get with you, like, we got to go to church. And she goes, yeah, that's cool. So that's kind of my story, right? I met her. We have 7 boys, custody of my 2. I adopted the 4. They all got my last name, and we raised them in the church. We took them every Sunday. Like, they helped, and you know what I mean? So just like that, the Lord, it's really hard for me to share my story here, because it's like, what do I say? You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is like the Lord answers prayers. You know what I mean? And I'm looking and seeing all you guys in here. You guys are just like my kids. You know what I mean? And one thing about you guys is like you guys are, no matter how you are, how tall you are, how big you get, you guys are all adults. You guys are getting ready to go into life. You know what I mean? And somebody took a chance on you guys. Somebody loved you guys enough to bring you here. And I see you guys up there just singing, and dude, that is cool. And that dude was playing the drums. Dude, he was getting down. Like I'm feeling the spirit in this place, you know? Dude, I got my hand is just gripped on this. I'm not used to talking in front of people. Dude, it's sweaty right now. Look at his red. I appreciate you guys being just patient with me. Yeah, for sure.
So you grew up in a house where you were surrounded with drugs, and that was your normal. That was normal for you. Yeah. And then you saw the violence, you saw the hatred. I mean, so you got into a couple of gangs. Yeah. I mean, and so there.
I wasn't like involved with the Hells Angels, right, but I got a shirt as a known associate and got to go. So they were always trying to recruit me. Yeah. Not the Hells Angels, but other. But yeah, I joined the Skinheads.
Right.
Oh, and then okay, yeah, that's good. All right, dude. So I got another story about the skinhead thing. Okay, so I was sleeping one night at this house, right? So here I am a skinhead. I done made the vow. So I'm sleeping at this house. Dude, this is cool. This is helping me, right? So I'm sleeping in this house, and I get woken up, right? And these are skinheads. These are people. This is part of the gang. And I was staying there because I had no place to go. And they wake me up, and they tell me there's a possum in the house, right? And dude, I'll snatch a possum up, dude. I don't care. Like, I was catching snakes, but. So anyways, I go, and there was a bunch of little baby possums inside the house. So I catch this little possum, and I take it outside, and I thought, why would they wake me up for that? You know what I'm saying? And I was real groggy, right? So anyways, what happened was, when I went back to sleep, they beat me up real bad, and they robbed me. My own people robbed me. Dude, they beat me up bad. They stole everything out of my car, followed me out of town with guns. The first gas station that I went to, nobody would help me. I was running out of gas. The second gas station that I went to, nobody would help me. I was running out of gas. And I'm like, man, this sucks, right? They didn't want me. They let me live. But they didn't want me around them. because they knew that I would retaliate. You know what I mean? That's how we did it. But the third gas station I went to was this little black girl, right? It was a bad neighborhood. She come to the glass. I said, I blood all over me. I said, I need gas. And she comes to the window and she says, honey, take all the gas you need. And that, dude, I was just like, a little black girl did that for me? Like, I couldn't believe it. I put the gas on my car. Like, I took the Rockford Fosgate amp out. Like, it was the old school Rockford Fosgate. And I gave it to her. I put it there. She had to come out and get it because I had a little window. But yeah, I remember that story. So that's what got me out. And I didn't realize till later on. So I sworn into the skinheads, but I was jumped out and robbed, right? So I'm no longer tied to them. But I didn't realize that till later on. And I never did retaliate. Matter of fact, I lived in the same neighborhood for years. And that's when I trained. I started working and I started training. I taught my kids how to fight. Yeah, I trained under Don Kwan's kickboxing. I did Jeet Kune Do from my instructor, Warren Basil. Wrestling, boxing for about 20 years. Had my own boxing gym. Like I was ready to fight everywhere I went, but I never really had guns. Everybody I knew that had guns that would shoot at people, they were always in jail for a long time, but I just never really. Yeah. So I thought I would share that. That was a huge part.
No,
yeah.
That's really good. So I want to just share the contrast, right? Yeah. So you grew up a certain way, and then even though you accepted Jesus at a young age, you still took time to walk out of that lifestyle. Yeah. It took you a while.
It took me a long time.
And then once you met your wife, and then you two kind of got off on your own, and you were focused on going to church. Yeah. You made a dedication that you were going to raise your children in the church. And now I know all of your sons, and they're all dedicated to Jesus Christ. They've given their lives to Jesus. Yeah. So what would you say is one of the most difficult when you've accepted Jesus, but you're trying, like you're still kind of struggling with some of the old things of the past? What would you do, or what would be your recommendation for, let's say, someone who's struggling with some bad habits from their past? How would you suggest that they focus on Jesus?
I would say number one, I would examine who I'm hanging around with, right? I'd get around some spirit-filled people, right? And I would get around people that are on fire with the Holy Ghost, that believe in deliverance.
Yes.
Because even though I got married, I was still fighting everybody.
Yeah.
I was still, I was out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. Examine who you cut off the bad fruit. Let Jesus be your foundation, start to build you up, and get deliverance, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's what I would say, because I still didn't get deliverance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Let's open up the floor to some questions. Who here has some questions for Clay that you would like to, and it could be about anything. Clay, I know him really well. He'll answer anything.
How did I get to Oklahoma? Okay. All right. So my wife had family in Iowa. Okay. And me being in a carpenters union, I transferred my books to the local carpenters union place in Iowa, bought a farm. Okay, got approved to buy a 20-acre farm. It got cold and I left. Okay. We did it again. And we fixed up a house. Took us 7 years, built the boxing gym, built all that stuff and sold it to buy property out here because my wife's family was supposed to move out here. So that's kind of like a short, that's how I got out here. You know what I mean? We always wanted property. You know what I mean? So working in the carpenters union, you'd get laid off for a while. So I asked the kids, I said, what would you guys do? And they're like, hey, let's move to Iowa, because my wife's sister was always saying you could have a big, huge farm. But dude, it got cold, bro. And we just left. I'm talking cold. Everything frozen. Like you can't even guess. So that's how we got out here. So we sold the house for $60,000, bought it for $750 7 years later. And that's how we were able to buy some property out here. Like to own it, right? Because we never really owned anything.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Oh, she's asking, how did me and you become friends?
Oh, okay. So I was going to try to say something funny. I can't think of anything funny. Deliverance ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah, deliverance ministry. I come in and got deliverance, and my family, we all go, and this guy's like a father to me. Like I just love him so much, and he's really helped me because even though I'm like, hey, I'm delivered and I'm following Jesus, my sanctification process brought me further. I still call him all the time. I'm like, man, I'm being attacked today. Like, so not only that's how I met him, but I'm still pursuing a relationship. Like I said, right? We need those godly people in our lives to say, hey, Clay, this is demonic or this is the flesh or to be real with me.
Yeah.
He's real with me. He's like, Clay, you're messing up. And I needed to hear that. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you.
Yeah, great question. Who else has one? I think we had some over here. There's one. David's got a question. So how did you start being a licensed contractor, and how did you start your business?
Okay, cool. That's a good question. All right, so I got a job at a hardware store, a place called True Value. There 2 years. And I was able to see people come and go out of the hardware store and just weed eating and doing things on the side. Well, there's a guy named Dennis Austin that would come into the hardware store, and he did construction. So I would work for him on the side, and this guy he would buy an old house. He would turn he would turn one house into two houses. He would turn the shed into a house. He would turn, like, he was good, so I became fascinated by it. So growing up, like, not being able to own anything or being evicted all the time, you know what I mean? I saw him do that, and I was like, dude, I want to do that. And I didn't really know how to read a tape or anything, so I started working for contractors on the side. And so what's cool about that, even though the things that I went through when I moved to Iowa and I moved out here, I was still able to take those skills with me. You see what I'm saying? It's really important to get skills. Don't just settle at a gas station. I understand if you guys want to work there to get where you're going, but take this opportunity to get some skills to where you got to think, what does the world need? They're always going to need contractors. They're always going to need electricians. And heating and cooling is another good one. If I wasn't going to be a carpenter, I'd probably do heating and cooling or electrical. Yeah, work under those people, and then you'll get, you know what I mean? Because it's easy to just chill, right? Like, oh man, I'll just take it easy. But you know, later on, as you start to get older, people are like, man, you're getting a little old. Like, but you can take those skills with you, right?
Yeah. Who else has got a question for Clay? Yes, sir.
What do you say?
So he's saying, similarly, like when you cried out to God when you were on the city bus.
Yeah.
He's wanting to know, did you have any other moments where you felt like God was right in front of you and you needed him in that moment and he showed up?
Like crazy stuff, or
Yeah,
just
I
like an
think they're
experience?
wanting to know some
Yeah,
crazy
you guys
stuff.
want to know crazy stuff? You guys want me to be real with you, right? Okay. So, anyways, I was seeing this girl, right? She was in different high school, so I was riding my bicycle, and this dude picks me up, right? He's like, hey, you want to ride? I'm like, sure. He was like, big old dude. And anyways, he's like, hey, where you going? I go, well, I'm just going, drop me off at this school. So the guy takes me to a trailer park, where I said, why are we here? He goes, let's just go smoke some weed. And I was just like, man, I got better weed than this guy's got. That's cool. So we go into his apartment. He tells me his roommates are sleeping. So be real quiet. Early in the morning, I'm like, all right, that's cool. We go in his room, and he locks the deadbolt on his door, right? So the door's here, and then there's a little space, and then here's his bed. So he's sitting against a wall there, and there's a closet right here, right? So he's sitting like this. He takes the remote, and he puts on a porno video, right? So I'm like, dude, my heart starts pounding in my chest. I'm like, all right, but I'm just playing it cool because you don't want no one to know you're scared, right? So I'm like, oh, dude, that's cool, right? So we start smoking some weed. So he's sitting here, and he takes his foot, and he moves the clothes over because it's a small room, and there's a big hole in the wall where he set his, and he grabs a shotgun, right? And he tells me to drop my pants. At the same time, he's taking down his pants, and dude, I was frightened. So I just dropped my pants. I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm just standing there, right? And, he tells me to do, he told me to do. But anyways, so at that point, no one knows where I'm at. I'm ditching school, right? So he's got the shotgun. So I go down, and I just grab him by his nuts as hard as I could. I twisted, and I yanked on him, and it didn't do nothing. It did nothing. The fight was on in that room. So he's there, and I know, and he's got the gun in one hand. I got my hand on the shotgun, and I'm just hitting this dude as hard as I can. And he's screaming, and he's kicking me back, but I don't want to let go of the gun. You know what I mean? So the fight goes on. I'm hammer fisting him. I got blood all over my hands, and my pants are down, right? So I can't like run around. Like, I got to keep in position. So the dude gets up and runs towards the door, right? And he's trying to get. So I was so scared that I never even thought about shooting him. I flipped that shotgun around, and I just cracked him across the back of his head, and he kind of went back, and then I hit him again, and it broke the stock, off the back of the guy's head. So, and then he slips out, right? And then I hear the front window, and I hear police, and I'm thinking, what the heck? So I'm pulling up my pants, and then I got the shotgun in my hand, and I go out, and it's completely quiet, and there's nobody there at all. Like, there's no roommates, there's no nothing. So I go outside, and then there's nobody outside, so I just take off running. I'm hopping over these little fences. Our trailer park's got those little fences, and I'm banging on people's doors, but no one's answering me because I got this shotgun in my hand, right? So I throw the gun down, I go to another one. I tell the lady, I said, oh my God. She's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah. She's like, she calls the cops. Then they all come. A bunch of them come, right? They throw me in the cop car. I never see this other guy, and they take me to the police station, and they got me in this room, and they're just like hammering me with questions. Like, you tried to rob him, you did this, because I guess it really messed the dude up. But he didn't drop. Like, I don't know what kind of drugs he was doing, but we was both scared, I imagine. So they're just hammering me, and they're like, dude, you tried to rob him. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. And I'm like, I don't know what else to tell you. And they tell me, well, did he have tattoos? Did he have anything? And I remembered he had a big old mole on his leg. And I go, he had a big old hairy mole on his leg. And they're like, what? And I go, yeah. Yeah, he does. And they went in there, and they come back. They're like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, and I go, dude, like, I had drugs. I never got searched in my pocket still, So by the grace of God, like, I wasn't going to share that story. I wrote that down, actually. But by the grace of God, so I never even showed up to the court date because I didn't want to have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so by the grace of God, I got saved out of that one.
So the way I'd frame that is that although he got in a really bad situation, right? A guy tricked him. Yeah. A guy deceived him, said, hey, I'm going to give you a ride to school. Yep. But he lied to him, took him to his house, and wanted to do him bodily harm. Yeah. And his life was at stake. A guy pointed a shotgun at him, and God, through a miracle, you were able to, defend yourself.
Come to find out, the cops told me the gun was never even loaded.
Wow.
I just used it as a bat because I was so scared. Yeah.
That's what I would call a close call. Like, God watched over you.
Yep.
And I believe that God watches over us and protects us, as Psalm 91 says, because as we grow into Christ, as we become the people that God wants us to be, like, we have a mission to do. Yeah. We have to come alongside other people and help them and be Jesus to people. And so that's what I'd like for you, Clay, to share, like, how you went and prayed at hospitals for people and how you pray for people in parking lots. God has definitely changed your life. Yeah, I mean, it's good. Not even, it doesn't even resemble your old life anymore. No. So share some of your stories, like how you started praying for people in hospitals.
Yeah, so I'm totally different, right? Totally different. That's a good point. And that's why I can't really share in my old neighborhood, because people are like, dude, I'm not going to listen to you. You know what I mean? So now I go out and I share around Walmart that God has given me a gift. I can go around Walmart. I pray for people all the time. I see them get healed. I'm a deliverance minister. I cast demons out of people, which is really cool because I went to a hospital. What is your name?
David.
Yeah. David. I like you, David. Yeah. So I feel there's like this toughness about you. You know what I mean? But the Lord's going to show you some things, some good things. The Lord's going to guide you. You're going to be able to help bring men, minister to men. I'm really seeing that over you. That's super cool. But so I was talking to my pastor. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm just going to go pray at the hospital, right? So he's like, you can't go pray at the hospital because, like, you're not licensed. I'm like, why not? So I get in the parking lot. I'm like, Holy Spirit, will you lead me, show me? And the Holy Spirit gave me a yes. He gave me confirmation, right? So I can go into the hospital. So I go in the hospital. It's like almost like the elevator doors just open up for me. And so I start praying for people. So for like week after week, I'm making it there. Not only am I making it there, I'm reading scripture over people that got COVID, people that are sick, little old ladies with tiny little hands. And I tell you what, you have a little lady who's dying. You have her pray for you? Dude, it's powerful. Like they're taking a breath, and it's super cool. And so the nurses are like, hey, go to this room. Go to this room. Like I'm just free reign, bro. And not one time did I see any of the priests come and praying for people. I'm like the only one. So I came on a Saturday, and a lady, she saw me, and she took me in the side room. She goes, hey, dude, this has got to stop. I'm like, what? She's like, hey, you can't pray for people. I'm like, why not? She goes, well, you're not licensed. You're not like Catholic. And I'm like, I should have just been like, okay. But I was like, but I don't see your people praying. She goes, well, that don't matter. I'm like, what if I don't go? And she goes, well, I have security remove you. You know, I shouldn't have said that. You know what I mean? You know how we're supposed to be humble, submit, turn the cheek, turn the spiritual cheek, all that stuff. So I got kicked out, right? I get kicked out of this hospital. So me and Jake are riding. I'm like, dude, I got to go one more time to try to like convince her. So I go. The lady takes me in the back room with the security guard, like it's a big old deal. And I'm like, hey, you know, there's nobody getting healed. As soon as I mention the word demon, the lady, she goes, are you seeing demons now? And I was just like, dude, like, it was over with at that point. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so I got to pray for people. I got kicked out of the hospital. So my son Clayton went in. He had some problems with his stomach. The security tried to kick me out again. They didn't know I was with my wife. We went in there. His stomach was good. But as I was walking out of the hospital, I looked in the little octagon area, and they had my mugshot, carrying a Bible like through the hospital. Yeah, so that was a cool part. The Lord has given me a gift. I'm able to pray for people. So the Lord gives us all gifts, right? It just depends on what do we want to use them for, right? That's the thing, right? So I'm able to go pray for people. A lot of times at Walmart, you know, you just go up or anywhere, you pray for people, and they're just waiting for that. You know what I mean? Which is super cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, Clay has shared with you tonight. You got a rare glimpse into what it was like to grow up in, was it East LA or
San Bernardino?
San Bernardino.
Yeah.
And he, you know, you probably have never known anyone to live that kind of lifestyle. And for God to take him out of that lifestyle, and now he's a respected businessman. He owns a successful construction company. His sons are also working in that trade, and they're all just full of Jesus Christ. They exude Jesus Christ. Yeah. You know, him and his entire family pray for people, and you know, I think it's such a rare opportunity to hear a testimony like Clay's. And I appreciate all the questions that you've given for Clay tonight. Is there any other questions you might have for Clay? Yes, sir. So what's your favorite Bible verse first?
I would have to say Luke 10:19.
Okay.
Behold, I've given you all authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall harm you. So that right there says over all the power, over every satanic altar, over everything in the sky, above, below, everything. We have all authority because that's what the blood of Jesus does for us. So
and now he wants to see your fighting stance.
My fighting stance is my fighting stance is really like this, right? I like to keep my arms up, and I like to keep this back to parry with people. You know what I mean? I like to circle. You know what I mean? And I like to jab. Jabbing is super important because jabbing is way far out, and one hit right here, their eyes will water. But the thing is, like, the Lord showed me I was able to teach my kids how to fight because I thought that's the way it needed to be. But the whole time I was supposed to be fighting in the spirit, right? I got an even stronger desire for that now. You know what I mean? I didn't throw away, but I gave away all my boxing stuff, and I held on to it for 5 years. But when I went to get rid of it, I got mad at my son for telling my wife about it. I was like, dude, that was like an altar for me, right?
So now you've given up all the fighting,
Yeah,
memorabilia.
the memorabilia, yeah. And
now
I wasn't like some huge UFC. I fought once for King of the Cage. I lost that fight to points. You know what I mean? But I was real good with my hands. I'm not like some superhero.
But now you're just for self-defense.
Just for self-defense, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So.
That's a good question. Any other questions for Clay? There's one in the back.
He's going to have a good one, I could tell.
What's your question? Say again? Yeah, so tell him about the church you go to. He's asking about the church you go to.
The church I go to. The church I go to, the pastor is an ex-NFL football player. And so they are moving in the spirit there. And I mean, not because of his position, but they're just totally open to the Holy Spirit. So I go to a spirit-filled church that believes in everything in the Bible, not just part of it. So
And
that's
that's
the
in
church.
Midwest City.
Yeah, Midwest City.
Yeah. Any other? Yes, David's got a question.
So,
Were you ever interested in martial arts?
well, that's what I did. I did mixed martial arts. I studied under Warren Basil, Jeet Kune Do, and I did kickboxing. I did boxing and I did wrestling. Yeah, so it was actually fun. When I met my wife, she was all for it. I'm like, so, yeah. I would say if you're interested in those things, like, do it for the glory of God because it's fun, but don't do it because you're
wanna injure people.
Because the Lord's gonna, yeah. I did it because I want, and I was able to train my kids, and I was in their corners. They were able to box, but.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, thanks for that question, David. Any other questions? Here's one.
Oh, so Jeet Kune Do is so Bruce Lee took that. Bruce Lee took all like the different fighting styles, you know what I mean, and put it into one. And that's where like mixed martial arts, right? So not just boxing, but the best thing out of boxing, the best thing out of karate, the best thing out of I don't know if it would be wrestling, but just different parts. You know what I mean? So it came from Bruce Lee, yeah, Jeet Kune Do. Yeah. And by the way, guys, I got to spar with this dude right here. He's good. Yeah. And I didn't tell him like I was out of breath, like I held that back. I was like yeah, man. I appreciate you, man. I still enjoy it. It's super cool.
Any other questions for Clay? All right. Well, would you like to ask for anyone to come up for prayer, or would you like to do a call? What would you? How would you like to end this?
Well, I think I guess I just do what Jesus would want me to do. Is there anybody here who needs prayer? Is there anybody here who's struggling? Is there anybody here that don't know Jesus? I'm going to put those three things out there. I'd love to pray for you. You know what I mean? I want everyone to like everybody who's feeling in their spirit like, hey, I want to get up and I'm not. Ask yourself, why not? Does the enemy have you bound in position? You know what I'm saying? So like I would say just if you want to come up for prayer and you feel like you want to, the devil's a liar, just come on up and get prayer. Just like I grabbed this mic, just like you guys came up and sang. Yeah, so I like to. Anybody want to come get some prayer? You want some prayer?
Does anyone else need prayer? I'd be glad to pray for anyone. And it doesn't even have to be about yourself. It could be someone in your family. It could be a situation at school. anything at all.
Spirit to get out now. In the name of Jesus Christ. Tell it to go. Get out right now in the name of Jesus Christ. Like you mean it. Out in Jesus' name. Out. In Jesus' name. Out in Jesus' name. Out. That's right. All right, let me pray for you. Father God, I just thank you for this man of God right here, Lord. Right now I just lift up the name of Jesus, Father, the name that is above all names, Father. Father, we come before you, Lord, boldly before your throne, Father, with this young man, this child of God, Father, and it says in your word, Father, that you're childlike. So, Father, I thank you for his boldness, Lord, to come up here, Father. So right now, in front of Abba Father, in front of Jesus Christ, in front of all the elders, in front of the angels in heaven, Father, right now we bind every evil spirit that is in this man. We bind you in the name of Jesus Christ, and we command you to go straight to the feet of Jesus Christ. Right now we bring the blood of Jesus against every demonic spirit. We break its power. We smash it with the hammer fist of God. And Father, we release that vengeance, the terror of the Lord on every demonic spirit. We command it to go now in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. We command you to get out and to leave this body right now, up and out right now in Jesus' name. Up and out every evil spirit that's been tormented. Up and out right now in Jesus' name. Every evil spirit that tells him he's not good enough. Up and out in Jesus' name. Every evil spirit that says he's not able to be forgiven. We command you to come up and out right now in Jesus' name. Every evil spirit that torments him in the night, every evil spirit of dreams, every lust spirit, every incubus spirit, every succubus spirit, every demon, every spirit of pride. Right now, Leviathan, we strip your scales right now in the mighty name of Jesus, and we break your power with the blood of Jesus. We call upon Holy Ghost fire to drive every demonic entity out of this young man. So, Father, we thank you, Lord, for your victory. We thank you that we have the faith of Jesus Christ, Father. So we say every evil spirit to say up and out and leave this man right now in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ. How you doing, dude? Yeah, that's what you want to think about. See, this is cool right here, guys. If there's anybody who's afraid to come up here, I encourage you guys, come up here. Let's listen to pray. Yeah, man, this is cool. This guy did it. Right here, I want you to look at everybody, okay? See everybody there? And I want you to do this. I want you to play. Come on.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to my friend Clay. This is the first time he's given his testimony publicly, and so this is a real honor for you. And it took him a lot of courage and boldness to share the hardness of his life. He shared everything with you. He didn't hold anything back, and hopefully you can see what a difference that God has made in his life. That took him from that hard lifestyle to now to coming alongside others and praying for them and loving on them and helping them in however he can. So give Clay a big round of applause.